So welcome back to our second Courtside Mini, and as you can tell, we haven't quite come up with a better name than that, but we do have Joe Ward with us again, so we are fortunate with that. So Joe, here is a question that we hear a lot of, and it does follow on a little bit from the last one we had on Serena and Naomi. What are your thoughts around courtside coaching? Whilst the match is live, courtside coaching, what are your thoughts?
I'm still exploring my thoughts.
Yep.
Is the honest answer to it, and actually have been for many years. So I hope this doesn't sound too much like a sitting on the fence kind of answer. But I'm a big believer in not reducing a complex problem down to a simple answer.
Yeah.
So here, it goes on anyway, right? Coaching goes on from the side of the court anyway. Okay, we know that, we can see it. It's underground, it's undercover. At any given tournament, at any level, the coaches will be doing some sort of coaching at various levels of sort of hiddenness, I suppose. So it might be. I've seen coaches have the odd hand signal. They might do a little thing of the nose, a little thing of the ear. It means something.
Yeah.
And you get that from all the way to the other extreme, where you've got coaches who can't help but shout out or say things, or actually gesture, forehands or backhands from behind the court. So it is going on, and I have to say, to a certain extent, I can't think of another sport in the world, but I'm sure your listeners will fire in some answers, where the coaches who are paid to coach have to remain mute at the side of the court. I think it's a really really tough ask, actually, of coaches to do that, because instinctively, we're a team with our athletes. We want to help them, and okay, so that aside, the reality is it's going on. At the same time, I like the idea of autonomy. I think we need to be careful as coaches. I'm mindful as a coach that I don't give my players all the answers.
Yeah.
Because if I do, they don't have those problem-solving skills when they most need them in matches. And even if coaching was allowed in certain tournaments, but my player might be 5 courts down in an indoor venue, and I can't get down there, and I'm certainly not going to stand behind the curtain. And so you need to be a problem solver, whether or not coaching is allowed. Coaches aren't always there. And I think you become a much more robust and better developed tennis player when you've found out the answers to yourself, and you've problem solved, and you've worked out the best way. And this is not just mentally or emotionally. This is also physically and technically. I don't know if you've seen this, but it's a basic tenet of constraints-based coaching is I give you a problem and you find a way around it.
Right,
and in finding a way around it, your learning is deeper. So I think that's brilliant. However, and I'm going to flip-flop back to the other side again, I think our sport is increasingly the kind of scenario that is promoting an ego orientation.
Mm-hmm.
I think, we've got winning and losing, ratings and rankings, trophies, wild cards, county training, regional training, national selection, international trips. All of those things are based on winning and losing. And if we're not careful, we're gonna create athletes with a mindset that is all about those things, and in doing so, athletes with an ego orientation are actually less well equipped with the mental and emotional balance to deal with the many things that our system throws at them. There's lots of research around how being task oriented by valuing your own achievements based on effort and learning and attitude, that prepares you better in terms of lower anxiety, higher self-esteem, more positive self-talk, more intrinsic motivation, Whereas if you are ego oriented, then you have the opposite. And oftentimes the way I look at it, because actually I've been both, and in reality most people are both at various times, and there's a big grey area in the middle. But I look back at my own tennis career, and didn't hit a ball till 13, year and a half out at 15, first Wimbledon British national champion at 19. So the whole thing was fairly meteoric in terms of the development was just so quick. And of course, what happened after that, I only got to that level because I was like, right, what's next? And, and I was lucky because I learned in a bubble in the Northeast, not a physical bubble, and a metaphorical bubble. And so I was outside of the whole rating ranking system. I was so far behind that it wasn't a concern.
Yeah.
Then as soon as I won nationals, I played my first Wimbledon, got my first world ranking, and everyone started using the talent word. And it is the most toxic word in tennis, in any sport, I'm sure. And then onset, ego orientation, and suddenly I thought the world owed me a living. I thought that I was going to be the next best thing without trying. My temper, my attitude, everything, and so having experienced both, I've seen massive developmental gains you can make, and the happiness that comes with it from being a task-oriented individual. And I've seen the trauma and the low moments when you become ego-oriented. And I tell you what, when the winds stop, when the winds rise, there's nothing left to sustain you. And had I managed to maintain a task orientation, I think I would have played longer. I was a baby when I retired, mostly through injury, but I think even that, if you've got a task orientation, you can bounce back again from injury and stuff. So, having done that massive monologue about task and ego orientation, I like the idea of coaches having a role in tournaments and in matches in contextualizing this very emotional situation where there is only one winner, there's going to be a handshake, there are no draws, and being able to say, well, yeah, that doesn't matter if you lose this match, you're getting better at tennis. Are you enjoying it? Are you running for every ball? Look at the backhand spin, it's been brilliant. And the idea of trying to inoculate kids to some extent from the harsh reality of a cutthroat combative sport, I think is one of the pros for allowing coaches to either be on court or to communicate from the sides, if they can contextualize it like that, almost take the sports out of it. However, and here I flip-flop back, many coaches don't go to tournaments in junior tennis. The reality is coaches are carving out a living on Saturdays and Sundays, so coaches at tournaments are rare. Many coaches, I dare say, would not have the skills to contextualize the match in that they wouldn't frame it in that way. They might just reinforce the idea of win or lose, blah, blah, blah. And then you get into the scenario of what is a coach? Is a coach a parent? And then are we letting parents go on court and give whatever messages to their children? And is there any training around that? Are they going on court and again just reinforcing this idea of we're not? So I think the whole question is fraught with what ifs.
Yeah.
But you can never never get too far from the reality that it's happening anyway.
Yeah. I think where I've kind of got to is I do like the fact of the player working out for themselves and kind of finding that within themselves. But then I look at our 11-year-old and I watch him play, and it's like every match is a learning opportunity for you. Every match is an opportunity for you to grow. And one of the jokes that the coaches often say to him is he knows the score in every other court apart from the one he's on. So he is a little bit of a daydreamer sometimes. And sometimes and we were fortunate this weekend because his coach was able to watch him play. And it was interesting every time they came for a little drinks break. The coach wasn't saying do this, do that because the lad you're playing is doing the other. It was, that's great. Keep the intensity going. Well done, you. You're doing this. It's what we learnt last week. Keep on doing that. And so, whereas, because there's a little bit of a different culture where we are, nobody was kind of getting grumpy that the coach was saying anything. So, which is a different feel over here to kind of in England. And I didn't feel like the coach was trying to give him the upper hand to win the match. The coach came with that mentality of, I'm just helping Elijah continue to learn, because whether he wins today or not, this is like a live learning session.
Yeah.
And so within that, is there almost an age range where courtside coaching is more acceptable? And is it when you get to pro, we start saying, well, you're old enough, you should be doing it yourself? But then we talk about this is a continual life learning thing going on. It's that balance of competition versus, I guess, process and learning.
You could flip that both ways, couldn't you?
Yeah.
You could say that youngsters need the context more than older players.
Yeah.
And therefore, maybe we allow, because there are a few tournaments where it is allowed. So, like
Okay.
when we take the children for County Cup, coaches go on court. There's a good tournament that called Player Plus in the UK, and coaches take players and sit on court with them. So there are some things like that. But then you could argue that actually, if we're talking about just the pure availability of having a coach there, it's rare. So then, are we giving unwanted rewards to the few players who can afford to have a coach there?
Very true.
Because it's not very democratic, really, if we're allowing it to go on, but not everyone can have access to it. And whereas the top players, they've always got coaches and an entourage there, the top.
Yeah.
And so, if the reality is that the coach is doing it anyway, why not let it happen?
Yeah.
And ironically, they're the players who need it least. So I hope this hasn't been a disappointment, but it is something that I'm really torn about.
Yeah.
One thing I am absolutely certain of is I think it's a mistake for the WTA to have done it in terms of the optics.
Yes.
When it's done universally, because for a major female organisation of sport to allow the optics of a man coming on court and telling a woman what to do, which is essentially what happens because there's so few female coaches, I think that's an error, personally. But of course, the other thing that's good, again, if coaches have the skills and the I suppose the desire to use it, is there's so much data. You know, the WTA have all this SAP data, and I know coaches who sit there with an iPad and they know everything.
Yeah.
Gone are the days we used to have to do a little chart and work out forehand and backhand percentage and stuff. You know, they literally can go on and swing a match by saying, look, do you realise that you're getting done with the forehand up the line? It's cost you 7 big points in key moments or something. So, yeah.
It's a tricky one because then you're not relying on the player to kind of work that out or to have dug deep and found a way through. Is there then the risk that during the drinks break, that at least I know I'm going to get a bit of advice to get me out of this hole. I don't have to dig myself out. So, yeah, it's one that could go on.
Yeah, and I think split. Yeah.
Yeah.
Completely split.
So thank you so much, Joe, for that, for joining us. If you have any thoughts on courtside coaching, what your pros and cons on that? Is it helpful? Is it a hindrance? Are you a bit old school and think it shouldn't be there, or is this a progressive way of helping through matches our youngsters learn? We'd love to hear your feedback, whether on Facebook, on Twitter, or through Instagram, or drop us an email. It'd be good to hear from you. Joe, thank you so much for being with us on our Courtside Mini.